Is this the dagger?
Welcome to another episode of the On the Ball Show here on the Right Way Sports Network YouTube channel. I'm your host, Pranav, and today I'm joined by my co-hosts, Justin Lacertosa and Christian DeBlock. Guys, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I mean, we didn't have a podcast for 2 weeks now, and we're getting back right in time for the playoffs and the play-in, the award, thing like that. So it's perfect timing. So I can't wait. Next week, play-in, playoffs. I can't wait. So I'm doing good.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I alter a lot of what he just said. But yeah, no, it's a lot to happen in the next 2 days to sum up the end of the regular season. A lot of awards, a lot of spots left to figure out for the postseason. So I'm really excited to talk about it tonight.
Yeah, and guys, with that being said, make sure to go download our mobile app. It's the best way to access all of our content. But with that being said, let's get right into what Christian was talking about earlier, and that is the play-in tournament is starting this upcoming Tuesday, May 18th, and we know three of the teams already in the Western Conference. The Spurs, the Grizzlies, the Warriors, the Lakers, and the Blazers are going to battle it out for the 7th spot, which team can get the 6th seed. And then out east, we have the Hornets, the Celtics, the Pacers, and the Wizards all in the mix. So let's start off with the Western Conference, since that's where the main action is occurring. Justin, which two teams do you see making it out of the play-in tournament, given the current situation? Let's break down both scenarios. In the scenario that the Lakers make it, that the Blazers make it, in each scenario, which two teams do you see making it out of the play-in tournament?
So the scenario that I think is most likely, I think the Lakers, they'll be in the play-in tournament come Tuesday, because I think they're just going to rest LeBron till then. I mean, it's pretty clear because LeBron was supposed to come back a few games ago. He didn't come back, and it's continued to get pushed off his return. And Anthony Davis too. I think they're just going to rest him as well until the play-in, because I think they know, they will most likely come out of the first round regardless. So I think they're just going to rest everyone, and they have that confidence. So if the Lakers, if they are the 7th seed, which I do believe will happen, honestly, I feel like the Warriors will beat them. Not because the Warriors are better, obviously not, but Curry's on a tear. They're playing the best basketball as a team that they have been playing all year long. And, they're getting hot right into the playoffs. And I know the Lakers, they've been great lately, but, I mean, they don't have LeBron or AD. And I think, they're just thinking we're going to make the play-in. We're going to ease into it. It's going to be an easy one game. We're going to get the 7th seed. We'll beat the Suns. But I think the Warriors, they're going to shock them if they play them. I think they're just going to come out guns blazing because they're playing the best basketball they played all year. So I think, honestly, the Warriors will beat them, and the Lakers will underestimate that. But the Lakers will still beat whoever they play, which is the Grizzlies or Spurs in the next game. That's pretty easy competition for LeBron and AD. And I think the Grizzlies will most likely win against the Spurs no matter what, honestly. The Spurs, they've been really bad lately. They were good to start off the year, but they've just been pretty atrocious the past month or so. But if the Blazers make it, which is still a very likely possibility, I think the Warriors also beat the Blazers because, I mean, we see time and time again in the playoffs, Stephen Curry, I'm not going to say owns Damian Lillard because, I mean, I don't like to say that about players, but, I mean, he has his number. He has the Blazers' number. And, again, the Warriors, they're playing the best basketball they played all year long. So I think the Warriors, regardless, they will be the 7th seed going into the playoffs, playing the Suns most likely. And then if the Blazers lose to the Warriors, I think same thing happens. They'll beat the Grizzlies or the Spurs. And the Grizzlies, I think they do have a chance against the Blazers because I think they're just going to be coming out wanting revenge from last year when the Blazers beat them in the play-in by just a hair. I mean, barely. It came down to the last few minutes of the game. So I think the Grizzlies will want revenge. But at the end of the day, the Blazers have Damian Lillard. I don't think Damian Lillard is going to make them miss the playoffs as a whole. And the Grizzlies, it's not like they're a top-tier team, obviously. I think the Blazers will beat them regardless. So I have the Warriors being the 7th seed no matter who they play. And I have the Blazers or Lakers as the 8th seed coming out in the West.
Yeah, I agree to a certain extent. I think if it was the Lakers and the Warriors playing in that 7-8 game, I do think that the Warriors are capable of beating them. The one important thing is I believe Wiggins, Steph Curry, and I forget the other. I think Draymond is also not playing tonight. Now, how much does that mean into a playing game next week? I don't know. They could be just resting them, but considering they're red hot,
it's for rest. They're resting them tonight because they play Memphis on Sunday, and that'll break down the 8 seed.
Sure. So yeah, it's more of a rest thing, and I don't think that will change too much in terms of rhythm. I think this team is red hot. We've seen that over the last couple of weeks, but I think even though maybe the Lakers could overthink them a little bit, I do think the Lakers would be able to beat them. I did get a chance to watch the Lakers a couple nights ago, and they haven't had LeBron, which will certainly hurt them or down the stretch of the season, of course. But he'll be fine no matter what. And we've seen Anthony Davis start to pick it up again. And we're kind of seeing what we've seen over the last five years or so. And he's one of the most dynamic bigs in the league and one of the best players in the league. So I think that's really important for them. I think they would be able to beat the Warriors. Now, if it was the Trail Blazers against the Warriors, I think I would lean more towards the Warriors beating the Blazers. I think they're a little more susceptible to the Warriors being a really dangerous opponent for them, especially because they're not very good defensively at all. But either way, I think whether it's the Blazers or the Lakers in that play-in, I think they will get in. Where it is a 7 and 8 seed, I don't know, but I believe that it'll be either the Lakers or the Trailblazers and the Warriors getting through. I don't see the Spurs doing anything. They just really don't set themselves up well to beat one of these bigger teams and at least win 2 games. And same thing goes for the Grizzlies. Even if they do beat the Spurs, which I assume they will, I just don't see them, getting another win against one of the Lakers, Warriors, or Trailblazers. So I think it would be the Warriors or the Blazers and Lakers, one of the 3.
So I'm going to break down scenario 1. That is the Lakers make it to the play-in tournament after dropping one of their final 2 games. So that's the first scenario. It will be the Lakers at the 7 seed, presumably Memphis or the Warriors at the 8 seed, and then the Spurs at the 9 seed. So in that scenario, I would pick the Lakers to pretty easily win the play-in game. I know that'll stray away from what you guys are saying, but the fact of the matter is it's LeBron and AD come playoff time, and that's the biggest thing. I think people are forgetting just how good Anthony Davis can be, especially come playoff time, and especially when he's going. Anthony Davis is the best big in basketball. I think he's slowly reminding everyone that in the playoffs, he has it all. He can shoot the 3 ball. He can shoot the mid-range. He has a wide range of post moves. He's great off the ball. I mean, this man can do it all. He's one of the best defenders, if not the best defender in basketball. I mean, you have that paired with LeBron James and that pick and roll, and their connection is just so lethal. And I think those two of the top 5 players on the planet will have an easy time against the lower teams of the conference. And given that situation, I would think the Lakers pretty easily make it with the 7 seed and face Phoenix in the first round. And then given the Warriors, or the Warriors and the Grizzlies would lose in that situation, whichever one has the 8 seed in that situation, they would probably play each other. Whichever team has the 9 seed, I expect them to beat the San Antonio Spurs. And then in that situation, I would see the Warriors beating the Memphis Grizzlies. Mainly because they would have the edge in an 8-9 situation, and I just can't count on Steph Curry going up against inferior competition and not getting the job done. And then in terms of the Blazers, if the Blazers are the one in the play-in tournament, then I see the Warriors are the ones getting this the 7th seed in the Western Conference, and the Blazers falling to the Golden State Warriors. And then here's a twist. It'll be Memphis versus Portland in the 8 and 9 matchup. I will go with the Memphis Grizzlies. I really will. I really will go with the Memphis Grizzlies. And the main reason why is Jaren Jackson Jr. is back, and that causes so much matchup problems because of his ability to space the floor. It makes Ja much better as a playmaker. The defensive attention on Ja is far less than what it once was at the earlier part of the season. He was a lot less efficient from 3. In his last 30 games, he's shooting around 40% from 3, finding his confidence in his shot. Given all those factors combined with Memphis' elite defense and their rising offense, in a one-game situation, I really think Memphis could knock him off. But then again, it's Dame time. You really don't know. But give me Memphis. Give me Memphis. But do you guys have anything to add to the Western Conference picture? So with that being said, let's turn it forward to the Eastern Conference. The current standings situate as the Hornets, I believe, are at the top of that picture, and then slowly following them in a tight race is the Celtics, then the Wizards, then the Pacers. So I'm going to start with Justin, our Wizards fan here. What chance do you give your team to make the playoffs, given the way Russ is playing, given the way we expect Beal to come back? Given all those situations, do you expect the Wizards to make the playoffs, and which two teams do you see making it out of the Eastern Conference playing tournament?
So honestly, it's tough to decipher who wins. I mean, the 7 through 10 could shift a lot. I'm pretty sure the Celtics have already clinched the 7th seed, but I mean, 8 through 10, if the Hornets lose to the Knicks and the Pacers lose to the Lakers and the Wizards beat the Cavaliers right now, which they're playing as we speak, I'm not sure who's winning, but the Wizards win and those two teams lose, then it comes down to Sunday, Wizards versus Hornets. The winner will get the 8th seed, and I'm not sure if we win that. I'm not really sure if we win that, but I'm very confident that we beat the Pacers. We've had their number all year. Russell Westbrook, I'm not sure what it is, but he turns into a different monster against the Pacers. Yeah, every single time. I mean, he just does something crazy. So I'm pretty sure we beat them. I'd be confident in that. I'm not sure if they'll have Miles Turner. TJ Warren's obviously out. Karis LeVert's been playing amazing lately. But, I mean, I don't think it's enough. I mean, I think Daniel Gafford, I mean, if Scott Brooks can play more than 15 minutes, I mean, that would be perfect. But Russ and Beal, I think Beal's going to be healthy by the time the playoffs roll around. I don't think his injury is that major. I just think we're just trying to be extremely precautious about it. And Russell Westbrook, I don't see this play slowing down anytime soon. So I think we would beat the Pacers, and I think it does end up like that. I think it will be us at the 9th seed, Pacers at the 10th seed, and we beat the Pacers. And then Hornets versus Celtics. Honestly, it's tough. With Jaylen Brown getting out, I mean, with Jaylen Brown there, I would say the Celtics pretty easily win that game. But now it's tough because, I mean, it's Jason Tatum. Kemba Walker's been great lately. But, I mean, there are two pretty close teams without Jaylen Brown. I probably will lean towards the Celtics winning this game because Jason Tatum is the best player in that game by a wide margin. And, I mean, the Celtics, I mean, Nesmith's been playing great lately. And as long as they're healthy going into that game outside of Jaylen Brown, I think they have the win there. But it's going to come down to the wire, in my opinion. So it'll be Wizards versus Hornets, and I'm going to give us the nod to beat the Hornets. It's pretty tough because the Hornets are an energetic team. They compete every single night. No matter who they play, it could be the Lakers, it could be the Pistons. They compete every night. But, I mean, I'm leaning towards more so our experience because, I mean, LaMelo Ball, he's never made the playoffs. I'm pretty sure Gordon Hayward, I don't think he'll be back by then. Terry Rozier, he's made the playoffs, obviously. He was great in the playoffs, but I don't think that's enough to overcome Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal. And I know Westbrook, he doesn't have the best track record in the playoffs, but at the same time, I mean, it's more than LaMelo Ball. He knows how to win a game when needed to against a team of the Hornets caliber. Obviously, not against like a top team, but you know, if he has to beat the Hornets, he'll beat the Hornets. He'll help. So it's really tough, honestly. Like I could see a world where the Pacers just shock us and beat us, but at the same time, I'm just going to lean more towards our experience. We have the Pacers number. The Hornets are less experienced than us. So I'm going to go with us slightly, but I could easily see us missing it.
Yeah, so I do see a lot of the reasoning why you would have to start off with the Celtics potentially beating the Hornets. But, you know, I think there's something about this Hornets team that just, you know, makes me feel like they got a shot to go – well, they'll have to go to the Garden, of course, and go beat them on the road. And I think I just have them, you know, slightly edging over the Celtics right now. I think the Celtics have been, if not the most disappointing team, there's certainly like one or two of them this season, which just it's been very underperforming ever since they got to the Eastern Conference Finals. Obviously, this Jaylen Brown injury really hinders them, and that will put a lot more pressure on guys like Kemba Walker and Marcus Smart to really show up. Even Evan Fournier, who I don't really think has hit a level that he should have, and maybe some people expected him to once he came from Orlando. So I'm not too sure about the depth. I certainly agree with you, Justin, that Jason Tatum is certainly the best player in this game, and I don't think it's close either. But I do like the depth of this Hornets team. I think they've showed a lot of continuity. They were supposed to be a very fun team to watch this season. They've shown that. Gordon Hayward's injury certainly really hurts them. If he's not back, which I'm not too sure about his status, That would really hurt them. But he hasn't played in a couple months, so he wouldn't be, up to speed anyway. And of course, Miles Bridges, who went into COVID protocol a couple weeks ago, is still not back either. So those are two big blows if they aren't available. But as of right now, I think I like what the Hornets are doing. I'm not too sure about the Celtics, so I think I'm going to give the edge to the Hornets. Now, in terms of the 9-10, I do agree. I think the Wizards are going to win that game. I think you mentioned it. Bradley Beal is out right now, but I think that's more of them just being a little precautious and knowing that they're going to be in this 9-10 game. They're going to save him, save his legs, just try to get him ready to go. And obviously, Russell Westbrook has been playing at a fantastic level, got the incredible league lead and triples-doubles in NBA history, which was really nice to see. He's playing at a great level. And I think the Pacers have been, once again, another team that we thought maybe could make a run. Once they got Karis LeVert, looked like a really good move, but TJ Warren's been out. Sabonis was out for a while. Miles Turner's been hurt. So injuries have really riddled that team, and I think the Wizards are playing at a really good level right now. Beal will certainly help Russell, and I think they would get in. Now, in terms of the Celtics playing the Wizards, it certainly could be a close game. I think it would be very high scoring, but I'll take Jason Tatum and the Celtics in that one. It's going to be close, but could certainly see the Wizards getting there as well.
Yeah, for the Eastern Conference plan picture, so the seeding right now stands as the Celtics at 7, the Hornets at 8, the Wizards at 9, and then the Pacers at 10. Or no, the Pacers at 9, and then the Wizards at 10. And given that situation, I expect, like you guys both, I expect the Wizards to beat the Indiana Pacers and advance to the 8-9 game. And then from there, I expect the Charlotte Hornets to beat the Boston Celtics. What can go wrong will go wrong with the Boston Celtics this year. That just seems like a reoccurring trend. I mean, whenever I expect them to do well, they don't. And whenever I expect them to fail, they do. I mean, it's just that's been their type of year. And I know Jason Tatum is amazing. And unfortunately, Jason Tatum is going to get blamed from a lot of people, even though he really shouldn't, for the Celtics struggles. But I know despite how amazing Jason Tatum is, given the fact that Jaylen Brown went down and given the fact that Kemba is extremely inconsistent, and your most reliable options come down to Smart, Nesmith, those guys are not guys you can really rely upon on a night in, night out basis to produce for you, be a reliable secondary option at this stage. And given that, I'm not confident in picking the Boston Celtics. They very easily could win because of Jason Tatum is prone to go off for a big game at any time, but I just don't see it happening. I see the Charlotte Hornets pretty easily sticking on to that 7 seed. And then in that 8-9 matchup, it's the same trend. I have to go with the Washington Wizards. It's hard to pick against Jason Tatum, but at the same time, you have to look at everything surrounding the Boston Celtics and see that his supporting cast is just not good, and they can't withstand any minutes Jason Tatum is off the court. And I think those minutes, combined with the fact that Jaylen is not there to really help them, ease through that minutes, I think that really hurts them, and they're not going to make it to the playoffs this year.
And for Gordon Hayward, I'm pretty sure he's out of his walking boot right now. I don't think he'll be back by the play-in, but, I mean, if he is, I think the Hornets will definitely win. But he could easily be back by the playoffs, so that's just an update on his status. I'm pretty sure he'll be back soon if they make the playoffs.
I mean, at the same time, though, it's really hard to go into Boston Garden and win 2 games. But, I mean, that may be what happens. We'll see. But we're going to keep it rolling here, and we are going to stay in the Eastern Conference. And there's a huge race to get the 4th, 5th, and 6th seed in the Eastern Conference between the New York Knicks, the Miami Heat, and the Atlanta Hawks. So I want to know, guys, which team do you see reaching those 4th and 5th seeds? And in a playoff series, which team would win, the 4th seed or the 5th seed? Christian, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so going into this week, I would have told you the Knicks were probably going to be in that 4-5. I'm a little skeptical now, I would say, especially after that Lakers loss, which really hindered them because Miami and Atlanta have been really on their tail for the last 2 or 3 weeks. As of right now, I think Atlanta is going to get that 4th seed. I believe they only have one more game left. I believe they're 40-31 at the moment. I forget who they play. It might be Detroit if I have it off the top of my head.
They play
on Sunday.
Houston.
They play Houston. Okay, Houston. So that's a game I see them winning. They're starting to get healthy. I think a couple guys are still injured. I think Cam Reddish is out. But they just got DeAndre Hunter back, and they're playing really well. So I think they'll continue to have that 4 seed. Excuse me. And then for the 5 seed, I think the one thing, and it's going to come down to tomorrow's game, and that is the Miami Heat versus the Milwaukee Bucks. If Miami does go on to lose that game, I do believe the Knicks will get that 5 seed, which was really important for the Knicks in terms of getting a potential series win, which is what I'm very hopeful for as a Knicks fan. But because Miami I believe they have to go to Milwaukee tomorrow, and they have one more game on Sunday, but their tougher opponent is tomorrow. So I think I'm going to go with the Knicks getting that 5 seed. I think they can beat the Hornets and the Celtics back-to-back days. Maybe that's a little optimism for me, but I've seen this team play so well over the last 2 months. So I think there's a lot of confidence with the Knicks right now, and I think they can win 2 games in a row, and the Heat could drop one. But in terms of a series in the first round, I think Atlanta and the Knicks match up really well for both teams. I think Atlanta's a very high-paced team, and the Knicks are very slow-paced and very defensive. So that bodes well for a very interesting first-round series. I would edge the Knicks in probably go to 7 games, but the Hawks could certainly be capable with Trae Young, John Collins, Clint Capella, who's playing really well this season. They could certainly, go win that series as well. And I would have the Heat, of course, matching up with the Bucks again, which would be a great series, just like last season. So it's right now I would have the Hawks 4, the Knicks 5, and the Heat 6, with the Knicks winning the first-round series in 7 games over the Hawks.
Yeah, so for 4 through 6, Atlanta, as I said, they play Houston. I think that's a pretty easy win. So I think they'll be 41-31. And they have the tiebreaker over Miami. And Miami, I think they beat Detroit, which isn't saying much, but I think they'll beat the Bucks too. I think they're just going into the playoffs. I think they just want to go on a roll, get hot before the playoffs. So I think they do go 2-0, but they have the tiebreaker over Miami. So I think Atlanta, I think they're going to finish 4th. Miami will finish 5th. And for the Knicks, they play the Hornets and the Celtics in the next 2 days. And I think they'll split it. I think they'll beat the Hornets and lose to the Celtics. So with that being said, it'll be 4 Hawks, 5 Heat, 6 Knicks. And the Knicks, obviously, they're not in the picture for a 4-5 matchup at this point. So for the Hawks and the Heat, honestly, this year, especially against the Heat, I'm not really buying into the Hawks because Trae Young, one of the best offensive players we have in the league. But, I mean, this is his first playoff series, 3rd year in the league, going against an experienced Miami team with Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, guys that just made the finals last year, one of the best coaches, if not the best coach in the NBA, and one of the best defensive coaches in the league. Eric Spoelstra, Miami, they're battle-tested. They know what it takes, how it takes to win some games in the playoffs. And with Trae Young, one of the best offensive players in the league, but I think for this year, for his first playoff run, I think he's going to struggle a little bit, especially against Miami. I think their teams are going to pressure him offensively, and I don't think he's going to be played off the court offensively, but I think he's going to struggle in some games in the playoffs. And then defensively, teams are obviously going to be fighting for switches, so they could have Trae Young guarding them. So I think teams are going to pressure him offensively, and then on the other end of the floor, I think they're just going to try and fight for that matchup as much as they can. So I really don't think this is a good matchup for Atlanta at all. If this was Trae's 3rd year in the playoffs, I think it'd be different because, I mean, at that point he would have some playoff experience. He would go through the growing pains in the playoffs. So maybe it'd be different at that point, and he probably won't be struggling in the future in the playoffs. But I think, once he gets into the playoffs this first year against Miami, which is probably the worst matchup for Atlanta, I think that's going to be really, really tough for Atlanta to win. So honestly, I mean, I do think if Atlanta plays the Knicks, I think the Knicks will win as well, but Atlanta will definitely fight. But for Hawks versus Heat, I think the Heat will win this in 5 games. Trae Young will definitely have a game where he goes off. You can't just slow him down for 7 games straight, in my opinion. So I would go Miami in 5. But the Hawks are hard to predict because at the same time, Trae Young can just be Trae Young. So, I mean, it's hard to predict with them. So I'm just going to say Heat in 5 games, but the Hawks are certainly a great team regardless of how much I don't really think they're great so in the playoffs. So regardless, I'm going Heat in 5.
So I'm skeptical on Trae Young's playoff translation because historically speaking, small guards don't really translate that well. I mean, he's still going to be Trae Young. He's still going to get his, but his efficiency will probably go down. His volume will probably go down. His playmaking will be easier to kind of neutralize. Not that you can necessarily neutralize it, but it'll be easier to prevent him from creating open looks as he normally would. But given that, in this final couple of games, I see the Miami Heat falling down to 6 and the New York Knicks actually taking the 5 seed. The reason why is the New York Knicks have the Hornets and the Celtics coming up on their schedule, both of which I expect them to win. But then the Miami Heat, and they very well could beat the Milwaukee Bucks, but I don't see that happening. I see the Milwaukee Bucks beating the Miami Heat in this weekend. And because the Milwaukee Bucks still have something to play for. I mean, the second seed is still up for grabs between them and Brooklyn. And most of us presume that will be the second round matchup, and home court advantage can play a big role in that. So given that, I think Milwaukee will be motivated to win that game. And that comes down to the Atlanta Hawks versus the New York Knicks in the first round. And that's still a difficult matchup for Trae Young because the New York Knicks have a suffocating defense, both on the perimeter, both on the interior with Noel. And given that situation, I would have to go with this is tough. But I would have to go with the Hawks. I'm sorry, Christian. I would have to go with the Hawks in 7 games. 7 games. And that's a respectable 7 games. And it's going to come down to a couple possessions. And then in that situation, I would just see Trae Young probably take over and seal the series. And the reason why is the Atlanta Hawks aren't as bad defensively as many people perceive. Yes, they have Trae Young, who's one of the biggest defensive liabilities, if not the big. Actually, no, I wouldn't consider him the biggest defensive liability, but he's up there. But they have great defenders around them, guys like Hunter, guys like Capella, even Collins is a positive defender. And they may get Cam Reddish back. I'm not sure about the situation about him regarding the playoffs, but they may get him back, and he's an excellent defender. You combine that with the fact that Chris Dunn is getting healthy. I'm not sure about the situation with Gallo either. They have a lot of pieces that's like missing time, but at the same time, they have a great support system and they're deep. They have guys like Herter, guys off the bench who can space the floor. Even Lou Williams is playing good basketball as of recently. And you combine all of that offensive firepower combined with the defensive system built around Trae to mask his weaknesses. I think the Atlanta Hawks would win that series. And I also see the New York Knicks offense could be a little stagnant at times, given the fact that they're not the greatest three-point shooting team. And that can really hurt them come playoff time, as their offense could probably be more predictable as they're more of an interior-oriented team.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention before we move on, and I think the biggest thing with getting into that 4-5 game, regardless if it's Miami, the Knicks, the Hawks even, is they would go on to play potentially the 76ers. And I think over the last couple of years, everybody's been very skeptical of the Sixers in terms of playoff success. And I'm not sure if any of those teams, could go and beat them in a second round series, but looking a little farther ahead, that is a really good matchup for any of those teams. I think the Sixers are certainly susceptible to getting beat by one of them. Whether it's the Hawks, Knicks, or the Heat, I think they're all certainly capable of getting it to 6 or even 7 games and potentially winning it. So that's really important for all these teams as we get down to the last couple of days of the season.
Yeah, I mean,
with the Sixers, my bad. But with the Sixers, I think the Hawks and the Knicks, if they make it to the second round, they'll fight, and they'll make it a tougher series than most expect. It could go 7 games. It really could. But I would still have the Sixers pulling out because that defense, I mean, you could say as much about their offense as you want, but that defense, I think that's enough to overpower the Hawks and the Knicks. And then the Miami Heat, I think the Heat are going to have a – I don't want to say it like this. I don't want to make this sound the wrong way, but I think the Heat will have a pretty easy time against the Sixers. I think it might be pretty close to what we saw with the Bucks last year against the Heat, because I think they have what it takes to neutralize Embiid. I mean, you're going to have multiple non-shooters on the court at all times. Ben Simmons, obviously, Matisse Thybulle, as good as he is defensively, he's not a shooter. Danny Green, I mean, I'm not sold on him being a good playoff performer because it's clear that his confidence just goes down and he doesn't have what it takes in the big moments. So I think he could be a non-shooter as well. So they could just really sag off those guys and just get onto Embiid. And Embiid, his efficiency could go down. So I honestly think if Miami plays Philly, I think they could make quick work out of them. That's a bold take, but I think Miami would beat Philly in a pretty short series for a 4-5 matchup.
Here is what Philly is. Can you read that? Can you read that? That's what the 76ers are. That is what they are. And last night's game, and I got a lot of angry DMs from Philadelphia 76ers fans last night, as they typically do send me after I talk bad or talk poorly about their team. And it's not necessarily that. It just, you combine that with the film we saw last night of Ben Simmons literally getting clamped up by Duncan Robinson and being so predictable on the offensive end. And then you look at that and compare it with past trends and see that nothing has changed except the fact that he's become even more predictable because teams know he's not going to shoot, and he doesn't really have any post game, or he's not like a dominant finisher like a Zion or a Giannis where he could just bully you, and he really hurts spacing. Combined with all of that, I mean, Miami could make light work of them. They even held Joel Embiid to like 6 points last night on inefficient shooting. The Philadelphia 76ers for the past 2 years have struggled in the city of Miami, and they've also struggled against Miami's zone. So you combine that with the fact that Miami has shooters from everywhere who could just shoot you out of a game, and they can defend on the other end and lock up your best players. I think that's a terrible matchup for the 76ers. I would probably pick Miami to win in 5 or 6 in a given situation like that. Even the Hawks and the Knicks, even though I wouldn't necessarily pick them to beat the 76ers, even then they match up pretty well as well, given the fact that they have the shooters and the defense to neutralize guys like Simmons and make spacing really difficult between Embiid and Simmons as well. I mean, all these matchups are really nice for these three teams versus the 76ers. I just think that Miami would absolutely beat them in a 7-game series. While I can't necessarily say that about the Hawks and the New York Knicks. But we're going to keep it rolling here. We are going to continue to the 6th Man of the Year debate. We're going to start with Justin on this one, since he had Thaddeus Young winning the 6th Man of the Year on his Instagram post. I'm going to let him clarify on that a little bit more. So, Justin, give us your case for why Thaddeus Young deserves the 6th Man of the Year.
So for this 6th Man of the Year race, I mean, I would have Joe Ingles, but the problem with that is he started 41% of games, which I believe is a little too much. But if he was at like 25% games started, I would go with him because his efficiency and offense have been insane this year. But for Thaddeus Young, I mean, this year he's been incredible. I mean, last year he wasn't great. He was still solid at times, but he wasn't great. This year he's been great. He's been one of the best rim finishers in the entire NBA. He's been a great defender. He's been a great playmaker. And in games where he plays 30-plus minutes, I'm not sure if this is exactly right, but he averages around 6.5 assists per game, something like that. And, I mean, in years past, he wasn't a passer like this, a playmaker like this. But this year, I mean, there's been times where he's just entered in as a playmaking hub for this offense. And, honestly, they work, like, really well with that, with Thaddeus Young as the playmaking hub on the floor. Zach LaVine, obviously the scorer, but Thaddeus Young just finding cutters, finding off-ball guys. His shooting, it still hasn't been great, but as a defender and rim finisher and playmaker, I mean, he's been amazing. And I'm not going to include Vucevic for this because obviously Vucevic is better than Thaddeus Young. But for the season, since Vucevic has only played since the trade deadline, I think Thaddeus Young has pretty easily been the Bulls' second-best player behind Zach LaVine, of course. Just his defense, and he started a good amount of games, but it's not enough to put it to the point where I can't give him the award like Joe Ingles. There's a few other guys that I have in contention. TJ McConnell, he's been great for the Pacers. No one's really noticing that. Derrick Rose, if Derrick Rose played with the Knicks all season, I think he would be the 6th Man of the Year. It's just the sample size. Bobby Portis, he's been incredible. His energy, his shooting. He's been a better defender than years past as well. And Jalen Brunson as well. He's arguably been the Mavericks' second-best player this season. Obviously, Porzingis is better, but this season he's arguably been their second-best player. And with Jordan Clarkson, I mean, I think he's up there. I would listen to a case if you said Jordan Clarkson was the 6th Man of the Year. But at the same time, I mean, since January, he's just been bad. I mean, he's been inefficient. He's been one of, if not the streakiest scorers in the entire league. And when his shot's not falling, he's not doing anything. And at times, a lot of times since January, the Jazz have been better with him off the floor because he's terrible defensively, and that's pretty much masked by the Jazz's defense. But he's terrible defensively. He's not a good playmaker. He takes shots away from other guys. So when his shot's not falling, he's a liability. And when a shot is falling, he's great, but he's just so streaky with that to the point where I can't give him the award. So I have to go with Thaddeus Young here, but I think there's a pretty good amount of candidates that you could talk about winning the award. Everyone I mentioned, they have a case, and Joe Ingles as well. Again, I think he would be the sixth man of the year. It's just about games played as a starter. But so I would go with Thaddeus Young for those reasons.
So in terms of Jordan Clarkson, I made a tweet last night comparing him to Jameis Winston of the NFL, if you know who that is. So basically, I compared him to a sense that he'll make a lot of big shots and he'll put up the volume numbers, but he doesn't really do it that efficiently. And there's a lot of baggage that comes with Jordan Clarkson, let's say. And before Christian gives his pick, I'm just going to say this about Jordan Clarkson. Imagine you're in a YMCA and you have absolutely no rules. You're playing pickup basketball and you could chuck up whatever shot you want. That's Jordan Clarkson. And although that's great, that's a fun way of playing basketball, at the same time, he's not benefiting his team because of his inability to pass. In the Warriors game, I saw like a certain play. It was in like the second quarter. I'm not sure if you guys may remember this, but Jordan Clarkson was at the top of the key and Bogey was wide open for the three. However, Clarkson ignored him. He dribbled to the baseline, found himself in a double team, and chucked up a mid-range shot that went off the side of the backboard. And it just plays like that where Clarkson, he leaves a lot to be desired in terms of what he can't do with his playmaking, which wastes a lot of possessions for the Utah Jazz. But at the same time, he's going to win it. He's going to win it because it's a volume scorer award off the bench now. But Christian, give us your pick for sixth man of the year.
Yeah, so I agree with a lot of what you just said. I think if we saw more of what we were seeing in the first half of the season from Jordan Clarkson, I don't think it's even a debate. I think, like you just mentioned, it's a volume score type award. They're really focused on what the guy brings off the bench in terms of volume scoring, and he was doing that at a great level. And once Donovan Mitchell got hurt, had that ankle injury, it's kind of, brought out to light what Jordan Clarkson is, and that's a volume scorer who can be really hot or really cold. And I mean, a couple nights ago, we saw him put up almost 40 points over 40 points against the Warriors. And he was great, and he was doing a lot of different things. He was, making some mistakes, but when he was finishing at the rim and drawing contact and finishing over these taller defenders, he was playing really well. So I think, he probably will win it just because of that. But Derrick Rose is a guy who I think, like you mentioned, Justin, maybe if he was there for the full season, would certainly be right there as maybe a number 2 or 3 candidate. But I mean, I'll sing his praises from beginning to end. I mean, he's been so good for the Knicks. I mean, the team has played exceptionally well ever since he got here from Detroit. That was one of the great moves from the Knicks this season, flipping him with Dennis Smith Jr., who was not – and there was no plans of him playing, certainly in the rotation, especially with Manuel Quickley's rise as well. So, I mean, Derrick Rose has been fantastic. I mean, we've seen it over the last couple of weeks. He's putting up a lot of more volume scoring as probably a secondary scorer to Julius Randle, especially with Alec Burks, who dealt with some injuries and COVID protocol. Who ended up putting up 30 points last night. But, yeah, Derrick Rose, I think he's right up there as well. But I would also go and agree with Pranav. I think Jordan Clarkson, just because, he's averaging over 18 points a game. The Jazz are up there in the standings. Maybe Thaddeus Young, which is, I think, a sleeper pick from Justin. Maybe if they were, in the playoff picture, I think that would help his case. But because, the Jazz are top 3 team in the West, I think he will get that award, and Jordan Clarkson will get the sixth man of the year award.
Oftentimes when I watch Knicks games, it's so funny too because I turn on the game, they're down, and then Derrick Rose enters the game, and then they go back up. I mean, his impact off the bench and his impact in the locker room as well, being a mentor for guys like RJ and Quickley, has come a long way for this Knicks team, and he knows the Thibodeau system, so I think he's been huge for the New York Knicks. However, I'm going to go with Joe Ingles for my sixth man of the year. My criteria is a little bit different. It's essentially, and it's going off the NBA criteria basically, and that is if you play 50% or higher of your games off the bench, you're in the running. And I think Joe Ingles has been the best six man when you take that into account. Justin mentioned it earlier. His efficiency is through the roof. I mean, he's shooting 45% from three, 49% on catch and shoot, and from like the corner as well. 41% on pull ups. He's been doing it all from the 3-point line, and that's really come a long way on this Jazz team that loves to space the floor. That's what they're about. They love to space the floor and shoot a hell of a lot of threes. And Joe Ingles is a massive part of that because of how efficient he is. And it makes defenses have to respect every single player on the Jazz because of how great of shooters they are. And that really helps them. And the other thing about Joe Ingles is we already know about his efficiency. He's shooting a true shooting percentage about like 69%. But you combine that with the fact that he's been a really good secondary playmaker within the Jazz offense, whether if it's Mitchell out, whether if it's Conley out, even in rotations with Mitchell and Conley in the lineup, Ingles' secondary passing ability, his ability to run the pick and roll with Gobert has been really beneficial for the Jazz offense. It's why they see a massive increase in offensive rating with Joe Ingles on the court. And you combine that with the fact that he's not necessarily negatively affecting the defense either, and he's a solid, like, neutral in the defensive end. I would give it to him, but if I'm forced to pick someone else due to those limitations of Joe Ingles playing a lot of games as a starter due to Conley and Mitchell being out, then if that's the case, I would go with either Jalen Brunson or Thaddeus Young. Both have been efficient as scorers. Brunson has been excellent as a playmaker off the bench for the Mavs, and Young has been a great defender off the bench for the Bulls. One of their better defenders as well on a team that lacks interior force. So I would give it to either one of them if I don't have to give it to Ingles. But if I had to pick, I would give it to Joe Ingles.
I'm pretty sure Ingles has like the 13th highest true shooting percentage of all time this year, which is just a testament to how good he's been. Like, that's crazy.
He was number one all time for a long period of time before he slowly dipped. But I mean, who expects 72% to be sustainable? I don't. But.
He's still at like 68, which is like
exactly.
The drop to 68. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean that's considered a drop, and if that's a drop off, that's a hell of a drop off. But we're gonna move forward with one of our final topics of the day, and that is the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics, we mentioned it earlier. They seem like they're descending into poverty. I don't know if I should say that, but Christian, I'll start with you on this one. Given everything that's going on with the Boston Celtics this year, do you think they will win a championship with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown on the team? And what do you think they need to do this offseason to make themselves legitimate contenders moving forward?
Yeah, first of all, I think last season was their best shot. Now, I don't know if they if they get past the Miami Heat, I'm not so sure they can, beat the Lakers in a final series. It would have been maybe a 5 or 6 game series. Maybe they get to 7. I don't know. I don't think they would have won it. I think last season was their best chance, though. But, yeah, in terms of this core winning one, I would probably alter towards no right now. I think with the Nets, probably staying really relevant right now. You still have a lot of other up-and-coming teams. If they can surround Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown with the right pieces, I think so. But we haven't really seen it, lately. I think Kemba Walker, unfortunately, he's just not been able to stay healthy ever since he got there. I think one of the moves they do need to make is get rid of him. I don't know how much value he has on the trade market, especially with his contract. So I'm just not sure, what they can get back for him. But they don't really have that great of a core. Marcus Smart is, a nice player. I think he's shown some glimpses of really good offensive potential, but he's not, a guy they can rely on consistently. Evan Fournier, I mentioned before. He's came to Boston and he's really not been that effective. They got Mo Wagner, for example, and then they had to get rid of him. You can go down the list on that roster and you don't really get a lot of consistency besides, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, who unfortunately now is out for the rest of the season. So, yeah, I'm, not too sure if this team can really, win a championship with this core. I certainly think if they can, surround Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown with the right pieces, they can contend. But in the next 2 or 3 seasons, I don't think they can just because, Brooklyn's probably going to, be in representing the East probably this season, potentially next season, and maybe even the season after. Until we see that core, get separated, I don't see who can beat them in the East. So, and even if there was one team, it certainly wouldn't be Boston. So, yeah, I don't see this core winning one right now. But if they were to win one, they would have to, get rid of Kemba Walker to start, and certainly find better pieces to, be a more legitimate threat to the Nets and the rest of, the NBA at this point.
Yeah, with the Celtics, I mean, I feel like there's, as you said, like it's going to be hard for them to win a title anytime soon. But if I'm Boston, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, untouchable. I mean, they're arguably the best young duo in the entire league. 2 All-Stars. You don't want to get rid of that right now. Unless one of them wants out, you don't get rid of it. But everyone else, I mean, Marcus Smart is amazing, one of the best guard defenders in the entire league. The glue guy, obviously, the energy guy. And he's been so important to them. But I would look into trades for Marcus Smart as well. I'm not just saying just trade him to trade him. Like, if you don't find a good deal, if it's just Marcus Smart for just a pick straight up, I wouldn't do that. Because you still want to win right now with Tatum and Brown. Although they're still young, you still want to win right now because they're used to winning games. You don't want to ruin that at all. So if I'm the Celtics, tell teams around the league, Marcus Smart's on the block. See what you could get for him. If you could get a good player and a pick or another player alongside that, just to improve the depth. And because, I don't really, I think this roster's hit their ceiling. I mean, Kemba Walker, as much as the Celtics should trade him, even though he's bounced back and he's still injury-prone and he's on a massive contract, as much as Boston should trade him, I mean, I don't know what deal they're going to find for him because that contract is so massive. He's aging. He's getting injured pretty much every other game at this point. With their Robert Williams, he's been great as well when he's played, but he struggles to stay healthy at times. And him as well, I would say he's on the block. Maybe teams would be enticed by a young center who's shown a lot of potential this season, and he's shown potential on winning teams as well. Maybe teams would be enticed by that. But I think they just have to make a change. And I've seen some people saying Brad Stevens, you got to fire him. I mean, Brad Stevens, he's obviously not the next Greg Popovich as we once thought. But at the same time, if you fire him, you're not going to get anyone better, it's the dilemma. I mean, I know he hasn't really controlled the locker room when Kyrie Irving was there. And, a lot of things have happened. I mean, the Celtics, he's been a pretty inconsistent coach with rotations, things like that, in the locker room. He hasn't been able to handle. But you're not going to find anyone better. He's one of the best X's and O's guys in the league. So I wouldn't fire him. But, in terms of just the roster, I would look for ways to fix it. Marcus Smart, one of the most underrated players in the league, in my opinion. But, you pretty much hit your ceiling with this roster, especially with the Nets coming in. The Bucks are probably going to just keep getting better. The Knicks, they might entice some guys to come over there. Miami, they're still going to be great. Philly, regardless of if they're frauds or not, they're still going to be probably better than Boston for the next few years. So it's really tough down there. So I would just look around the league, see what guys you could get, try and improve the depth. Because you're not winning a title anytime soon with this roster. And I would keep Brad Stevens as well because you're not going to find anyone better.
So in terms of the Boston Celtics, I don't know. I saw a tweet or an Instagram comment last week, and it was the Boston Celtics were poised to be the team of the future, and they don't even have a present. And that's so true in terms of how badly they messed up everything. And the biggest person to blame for this is Danny Ainge. Danny Ainge is the biggest catalyst to blame for this. This offseason, he had a chance to get Miles Turner in a Gordon Hayward trade package. He would have gotten Miles Turner and Doug McDermott for Gordon Hayward. He wanted more. He wanted TJ Warren as well, and the Pacers said no. And then they lost Gordon Hayward to the Charlotte Hornets and got a trade exception, which they used part of it for Evan Fournier, who will likely walk this offseason. You take into account all those situations. He ruined the Kyrie situation as well. He traded Terry Rozier, who was considerably cheaper, for Kemba Walker, who I know he couldn't have he couldn't have predicted a regression. But as smart of a basketball mind as Danny Ainge is, what did he expect Kemba Walker's fit to be on the Boston Celtics? He's literally just a worse version of Kyrie and a worse passer as well. He's literally an isolation guard who isn't terrific off the ball. He's not good at defense, and he's not a great playmaker. You take into account all of that, and then you pay the guy the max, and then those moves just kill your team. After that, I mean, he's lost a lot of young talent. Their drafts haven't been good. They took Romeo Langford when there were guys like Brendan Clark still on the board. They took Grant Williams one pick before Brandon Clark. They took Aaron Nesmith this year over a list of players like Tyrese Maxey. They drafted Desmond Bane, who's one of the most efficient rookie three-point shooters, and traded him away for Memphis to, I believe, a second-round pick. Moves upon moves just pile on for the Boston Celtics. Just terrible decisions made by Danny Ainge, who at one point people considered to be the best GM in basketball. But now he's looking his reputation is looking really suspect at this time due to all the moves he's made in the past couple of years, which has just derailed this Boston Celtics team. And I know they have two ascending superstars. Jason Tatum, in my opinion, is already a superstar. But you have those two stars. You have the centerpiece. There's not much you can do from here. You wait till the Kemba Walker contract plays out. Build the supporting cast now. Build the supporting cast right now around these three. Wait for Kemba's contract to run out, and then the max slot will clear. And at that point, you go out there and sign the best star who wants to sign in Boston. That's the only course of action. If that doesn't occur, the Boston Celtics are not winning a ring in the Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown era, unfortunately, and it'll be all on Danny Ainge's hands. That's just, quite frankly, what the situation has come to.
And one more thing about their draft situation, Saddiq Bey, who they also could have gotten at 14 over Aaron Nesmith.
Yep.
That was their pick. And I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure they traded that first-round pick that turned out to be Saddiq Bey for Enes Kanter, which is just I believe it was a draft. It was not Boston. It was Brooklyn. Brooklyn traded the Saddiq Bey pick to Detroit, who traded Luke Kennard to the Clippers. And the Clippers traded Landry Shamet to the Nets. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But regardless, like they could have Saddiq Bey.
They still could have taken Bey if they wanted to instead of Nesmith.
Nesmith has been good too, but there's just other guys below him that are better right now and for the future.
And Nesmith isn't too young either. I mean, he was a sophomore coming out. I believe he's about to turn 22. So, I mean, you take into account all those factors. I think Danny Ainge has ruined what could have been a great situation for years to come. But if you guys don't have anything to add to that, that'll do it for this episode. Thank you guys for tuning in. We do this every Friday. Make sure to go subscribe to our YouTube. It's the best way to access all of our content. Make sure to download our mobile app, the TWSM mobile app on the App Store. It's the best way to access all of our articles. But with that being said, we're out.